The White House's own crypto advisor just said something that most people heard and immediately moved past. Patrick Wyatt, President Trump's lead crypto advisor. He said this week, there are trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions, sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting on one single decision in Washington. One decision. Trillions of dollars, waiting. And then he said something that most coverage buried completely. That decision is stuck. Because right now, there are two versions of the same crypto law sitting in two different rooms, and they do not match. This is not a story about whether the Clarity Act passes. This is a story about whether two groups of lawmakers can agree on what the Clarity Act actually says before a window closes that may not reopen for years. And the odds of them agreeing in time just collapsed to roughly a coin flip. I want to walk you through exactly what happened, why it matters more than any price chart this week, and one specific detail from 1996 that tells you how this story is more likely to end than you might think. Welcome to XRP Verified. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Let's get into it. Let me start with the problem that almost nobody is explaining clearly, because understanding it changes everything about how you read the next few weeks. Most people think the Clarity Act is one bill moving through Washington. It is not. There are effectively two Clarity Acts right now. About a year ago, the House of Representatives passed their version. It had genuine bipartisan support. Dozens of Democrats voted yes alongside Republicans. That was supposed to be the hard part. Then the bill went to the Senate, and the Senate did not tweak it. They rewrote approximately 33,000 words of it. 33,000 words. That is not an edit. That is a different book wearing the same cover. So now you have the House version and the Senate version, and they do not match. The fight is centered on two things, according to people directly involved in the negotiations: how certain assets get defined, and what the consumer protection rules look like. Those two things sound technical and boring. They are not. How an asset gets defined is the entire ballgame for XRP specifically. It decides whether XRP gets treated as a commodity, a security, or something brand new with its own clean framework. That single definition shapes XRP's future in the US market more than any price chart, any ETF announcement, or any partnership press release ever will. So until those two versions agree, nothing moves. And the clock on making that happen is running out faster than most people realize. Let me show you the calendar, because once you see it, the urgency becomes very concrete. Lawmakers are planning what they are calling an 11th hour sprint of meetings next week to try to finalize the remaining disagreements. After those meetings, there is a national holiday, then a short stretch of working days, and then Congress leaves for summer recess. When you count the actual working days available before that break, it is painfully few. And in Washington, a bill that misses its window does not wait politely. It can sit frozen for months or years. Representative Dusty Johnson said something this week that I think deserves to be heard directly. When asked whether the House could move quickly if the Senate sent them something workable, he basically said yes, they move fast. But if what comes over is, and I am cleaning up his language here, a worthless mess, then it is dead. Game over. No time left on the clock. His bluntness is the most honest assessment of where this stands. Now here is where the urgency gets even more serious. This is not just about this year. Politics shift. If the makeup of Congress changes after the next election cycle, the people in charge of crypto legislation could be figures who have spent years warning against this industry, not building infrastructure for it. The window this summer is genuinely unique, and Dusty Johnson knows it. The prediction markets, where people bet real money on outcomes, had the odds of Clarity Act passage this year sitting fairly high not long ago. This week, those odds dropped approximately 14 points to roughly a coin flip. The people with money on the line just downgraded this from likely to 50-50. That is a real shift worth taking seriously. But before you let that 50-50 create panic, let me show you a detail from 1996 that reframes everything. In 1996, lawmakers passed a big telecommunications law. Buried deep inside it were a few short paragraphs about something called advanced services. A handful of sentences so technical that almost everyone reading the bill skimmed right past them. Those sentences went on to quietly unleash the entire modern internet. Every website you use, the video platform you are watching this on, the apps in your pocket. A huge portion of it traces back to those few ignored lines of legal text. Nobody made a headline when they passed, and yet they rewired the world. Representative Dusty Johnson made this exact parallel this week, and it is the most important thing said about the Clarity Act in months. He said, "The crypto bill on the table right now is the same kind of hidden switch. A few reasonable rules of the road that, on the surface, look modest, but could unlock innovation in ways we cannot fully imagine yet. Except this time, it is not communication being rewired, it is money itself." Think about that slowly. The 1996 sentences did not look transformative when they were written. They looked like small technical clarifications, and they ended up creating the infrastructure for the entire digital economy. The Clarity Act, if it passes, is that kind of legislation for money, not just for XRP, for how value moves across the entire global financial system. Now, here is the trillion-dollar twist that I think most people are not connecting, and it is actually the most hopeful thing in this entire story. When the Genius Act passed, the sister law that created a framework for stablecoins, something remarkable happened. Institutional money did not wait for every rule to be perfectly finalized. It started moving the moment the framework existed. RLUSD grew to over $1 billion. Stablecoin supply surged. Banks started building reserve management products. The action preceded the perfection. That pattern tells you something important about the trillions Patrick Wyatt is describing. Those trillions are not waiting for a flawless law. They are not waiting for every edge case to be resolved. They are waiting for permission, for the door to be open, for someone in Washington to write down that this is allowed, here are the rules, and we will not prosecute you for participating. The moment the Clarity Act crosses the finish line, even if it is imperfect, even if there are things to be clarified later, that same flood that hit stablecoins will roll toward tokenized assets. And XRP is positioned right in that current. Not because someone made a prediction, because the institutional infrastructure, the DTCC working group, the JP Morgan settlement, the RLUSD growth, the Ripple Prime clearing codes, is already built and tested and waiting for exactly that permission. Let me also give you the honest picture, because this channel is not a hype channel. The Clarity Act could genuinely fail to pass before the August recess. If the Senate version and the House version cannot reconcile their differences in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the bill goes into indefinite limbo. The midterm election cycle then starts to complicate everything. The political will that exists today may not exist next year. Bitcoin miners are under real pressure right now. JP Morgan estimates 20% are currently unprofitable, with Bitcoin trading below the estimated production cost of approximately $78,000. Miner selling pressure is real and ongoing. That creates downward macro weight on all crypto assets, including XRP. The precious metals sell-off this week, gold down nearly 5%, silver down 9%, is creating a risk-off environment where capital is moving toward safety rather than toward risk assets. Part of this appears to be related to yen dynamics and potential Japan carry trade pressures that we have discussed before. XRP is currently trading around $1.12, with the $1.05 to $1.08 support zone as the critical floor. The $1.27 breakout trigger has not been reclaimed. The short-term chart remains slightly bearish, and July 4th as a specific Clarity Act signing date is off the table. The more realistic window is mid-July if the 11th hour sprint of meetings next week produces agreement. Here is what I want you to carry with you. A coin flip is not a loss. A coin flip lands heads 50% of the time, and 50% odds of one of the biggest financial unlocks in American history for an asset that is already positioned with institutional infrastructure, DTCC clearing access, live JP Morgan settlements, and a stablecoin growing at 97% in 30 days is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to be patient and positioned. The 1996 internet comparison is not hype. Small, overlooked sentences in legislation have built entire economies before. The builders who were positioned before those sentences mattered are the ones who built the companies we use today. The trillions are not waiting for perfection. They are waiting for permission. And XRP is standing at that door. Stay informed, stay patient, and as always, stay verified.